Hello lovely people, I'm K3N and welcome to week 40, yes, 40, unbelievable, of our weekly Slow Stitch project for 2024. This week I want to do a little kind of stitch meditation based on the Zen Buddhist symbol called the Ensō. Now Enso means, I've made some notes, at the moment I'm struggling to keep things in my head. Enso means literally, it's from two different words in the kanji language, which means circle of togetherness. And it's used as a meditation practice by Zen Buddhist masters, the actual drawing of it and then meditating on the finished Enso. So I've got this little book here that I made some time ago, 2022, a couple of years ago, that I just wanted to show you first. I drew an Enso every day on some paper. This is actually on cloth. I drew this one on cloth for the cover. Every day for, I can't remember how many days, I think it was 10 days or 12 days, something like that. So I prepared all these little, this is paper collage, these little background squares, and then every day I walked into my studio and I drew an Enso, a very wibbly wonky one. The idea is not to draw a perfect circle, and I'll talk as we go along about the different kinds of Enso and the meaning and the symbolism and so on. The idea is just to draw. It's a little bit like when we did mandala, when we looked at mandalas, that same spirit of just being in the moment and drawing for the practice of the drawing. And on every other page of this little book I wrote a word to inspire myself. So elemental. You see they're all different. This has got a really thick line and then it fades away, and you mustn't go back and perfect them. The idea is you just make a single stroke, and I'm going to draw mine in a minute and talk about how and so on. Intrinsic. There's another one. And I stitched a little red cross to kind of symbolise, I don't know if it symbolises myself within the circle or outside the circle, or I don't really know. Spontaneous. So they're all different ones and different words. Receptive. And this is just black watercolour paper. The printing and the background, incidentally, this crisscross, I've got in my little box of mark making bits and bobs. It's the sole of a rubber sole of a shoe that I picked up on the street years ago. Persistent. And so I printed it, I just inked it and printed one way and inked it and printed the other. You do not need to go and buy fancy stamps if you just want to make marks. You can use all kinds of stuff. Patient. Visceral. I feel like I need to show you the whole book. Free. Natural. And there's the middle of the signature with the red. I bound it with red thread. Intuitive. Instinctive. Meditative. That's the end. And I did this fancy open spine binding with the little crosses. But we're not making a book. It was just to show you the Enso. So I'll put that to one side. So in terms of what you'll need some cloth. Now, traditionally it's done on silk or rice paper, so in white or neutral background. When I've been sorting out my studio, found these bits of, it's linen that was a night dress originally, which I found on a French flea market. I then converted it into a gardening apron with lots of with pockets and things. And then it finally fell apart, so I took the cloth out of it. So this is part of it. It's still got some stitching left in it. And here's the other part, already taped down to this bit of board. Now, so I'm going to put the two together because of stitching through two, but I'm going to draw on the single layer just because it will be easier. So I've got my single piece here. Again, it's got some old stitching still in it, which I just loved. But yours can just be, a plain piece. And I've got it taped down, excuse me, frog in my throat's come back again. I've got it taped down with masking tape on all four sides, so it's fairly taut, because you want to be able to just draw. Now in terms of what you draw with, I've got various options. I've got just a normal pencil, but quite a soft one. That's a 4B. I've got a graphite pencil, which is a 10B, a really soft one. I've got just a normal artist fine liner with a 2mm tip, so quite a fine one. You could try a Sharpie or whatever. And in my experiments, the one I liked the most was these Pentel Fabric Fun. I've had these for years. I got them for the children when they were little to draw on their t-shirts, you know. So you can draw on the t-shirt and then I think you ironed them and then they were wash fast. So that's where those are from. I'm not saying rush out and buy these, even if you can even still get them. You don't need anything special because we're going to stitch over the mark. So just a normal pencil is fine. What I'd recommend you do is take the actual cloth that you're going to use, a little scrap of it, you know, a spare bit, and then try it. You see on here I've tried all the different pencils that I've got. So this is just the normal 4B soft pencil. Whoops, do you see it needs to be taped down? Hope you can see. But you see it makes a mark. It's hard to draw with, but if it was taped down it would be okay. Whoops. The graphite pencil, that's much softer, that makes a much nicer mark. It's much nicer to draw with. The black felt tip pen. Let me turn over. I'm not drawing Enso, I'm just drawing. You see that makes a nice mark as well. And finally the one I went with, just because it's thicker, if you just had normal wax crayons you could try those, you know, or anything, just anything you've got. And that was the fabric crayon. So what I would recommend is you go and gather up everything in your house. You could also, for the book I used paint. I used black artist's paint. It was watercolour paint but in a tube, but any kind of paint that you've got, just mix up a fairly black, you know, if you've got the little solid blocks, mix up some fairly pigmented black. The only reason I'm not painting now is because it would have to dry, so I'd have to pause the video and wait for it to dry. But you can absolutely use paint if you want to. That would be more traditional, or ink if you've got it. The mark doesn't have to be permanent, it's just there for you to stitch over. I think I've said that already. So the only other things you need apart from your bits of cloth, something to make a mark with, are some thread. And I've got some black thread. I've got this black, darning thread, but you know, embroidery floss or whatever you've got, black thread. I've got some basting thread to base my two layers together, and I'll see how I feel, do some stitching in the background. So I've got this neutral thread, and I've got a little bit of red. There's already some red in my bit of cloth. I just got a bit of red out the orts in case I felt like doing something with that. Excuse me, and I've obviously got my bit of backing cloth. I'm choosing to use the two pieces the same, you know, you don't have to. So in order to draw the Enso, the tradition, I mean, I'm not a Buddhist, I'm absolutely not a Buddhist, but the traditional way is to meditate first on the symbol in your mind, picture the symbol in your mind and meditate, and I'm not someone who meditates either. But I would say just sort of center down, you know, take some deep breaths and focus on the piece of cloth and maybe visualize the shape that you're going to make. And then you pick up your marking tool. Sorry, that's not very conducive. You pick up your marking tool, you take a breath in, and on the out breath you draw your Enso. And you just draw it in one fluid movement, spontaneously. You don't think about it, you know, beyond just making the circular movement. And maybe observe while you're doing it whether you're inclined to draw anti-clockwise or clockwise or whatever, but just think about the shape you're going to make, the feeling of the marking tool in your hand and the line it makes on the cloth. So I'm going to draw mine now. I'm going to breathe in, and there it is, and that's my Enso. So that's all the drawing. I'm going to get rid of all this. I'm going to get the masking tape off. Sorry if it makes a rippy sound. I always keep bits of masking tape if they've still got any stick left on them and use them again. When it's stuck to cloth, often it doesn't, but you know. Sometimes you want it low tack. It's not a video about masking tape, just me being thrifty. Right, so it's very fluffy actually. The cloth's very fluffy. So now I'm going to put my two pieces together, get rid of that, served its purpose. And what I like as well is that because I've made this piece slightly longer, I can put it like that so that little bit just peeks out at the bottom. So I'm just going to simply baste these two together. Just with the invisible baste. And do I need to put some pins first? I don't know. Sometimes I feel I need to and other times I don't bother. Apparently I feel the need today. It's Sunday, as I'm sure you know. I am now making these videos the afternoon or evening in advance. It's actually more like afternoon at the moment because basically because it's Strictly Come Dancing this evening. The results, if you're in the UK and you watch Strictly Come Dancing. I think in other countries it's more often called Dancing with the Stars or something like that. But I've mentioned it before. In last night's show, one of the songs was Park Life by Blur. That is, yeah, make me smile. And a lady mentioned it in the Facebook group, in the private Facebook group as well, because of, you know, my calling my excuse me, calling my videos Park Home Life, and saying it was a nod to Blur. So I'm just going around the edge. I'm just wondering, yes, it does come off a little bit on my hands because it's not heat set, but I'll just be careful. Maybe if you've got something that needs to be heat set, it would be an idea to go and heat set it. I could, because I have replugged the iron. In fact, I ironed this cloth. Do you see how nice and flat it is? And my little studio is coming along. Many of you saw the photo I put here in the community of my cheese box storage on the walls. And then subsequently, which you haven't seen yet, nobody's seen, apart from me, is I've put the little L-shaped piece across under the window. It's just a nice height to stand at, and because it's under the window it gets lovely light. And that's where I stood to iron these little scraps because they were really crumply. And I wanted it nice and flat to draw on. The other news of the day, less exciting or less good news, is I've got a leak in the kitchen. I noticed last night when I was down, I've got a little rug down. Don't know if you saw it if you watch Park Home Life. I've got a rug down in the kitchen, a rag rug. And I could feel when I stepped on the rug that the floor underneath was kind of a bit, it wasn't really squelchy, but it made a sound. And I couldn't work out what was going on. I hadn't noticed it before. So I thought, well, there was no water on the surface of the floor. I took the rug up. So I investigated, and under the sink is the stopcock, you know, the mains tap that turns off the water mains. And it was dripping. Just a small drip. But I suspect it's been dripping since the chap came to take the old electric shower away, which is nearly a week, I think. So there was quite a big puddle in the bottom of the cupboard. And I hadn't noticed it in the cupboard because the cupboard's got a bottom shelf that only goes so far back and then the water's sort of down behind it. So it had gone underneath that, so my stuff on the shelf was obviously bone dry and fine. So anyway, I've got the rug up, I've had the heating on today. I've mopped up as best I can in the cupboard. And I've texted Dan the lavatory man, who came to fix my loo a while ago, who's on holiday only for the weekend, and then he's back. So he said he'll come and have a look in the week. So now I've got a jug under it, and I'm timing how long it takes for the jug to fill up to see that it, if it's safe to leave it overnight. Otherwise I'll have to try and get something bigger, but you can't fit a bucket or anything like that in there. There's too many pipes and things. So it has to be something tall and thin. Anyway, that's a bit of drama that I could have done without. But when the chap came to take the shower away, he did say that the stopcock was a bit dodgy and needed replacing, so he wasn't wrong. Right, so that's me all the way back to the beginning. So yeah, I needed a bit of meditative time after that. It did throw me a bit. It's funny, those little things that just, if you're feeling a bit fragile already, something like that, you go, oh no, why me? There are worse things in the world than having a bit of water on your kitchen floor, but you know what I mean, I'm sure. Okay, so that's me basted. I seem to be going with it this way up because I think this is the bottom, but that may change. So now I'm going to I've already threaded up. Now I've got all four strands of this. Is only 4-stranded, this thread, but it's about the equivalent of, it's slightly finer than embroidery floss. I'd say it's about the equivalent of 3 strands of floss, which is more than I normally stitch with, but I want to make nice dark marks. Now you can do anything obviously to embellish your Enso. I would say sit and look at it and give it some thought, or if you are someone who meditates, then you could maybe meditate a little, but at least just kind of study it. And you could couch, you could stitch around it. You could couch something directly over the line you've drawn. You could cover the line completely with some couched thread. Couching. I mention these things, and I shouldn't assume that you've all been here from the beginning, because every now and then we get new people. Hello, if you're new, you're very, very welcome. Couching is when you lay a thicker thread on the surface of the cloth and then stitch over it to hold it in place. And now I talk about couching because I love the rhythm of the couching stitch the way I do it. I don't think I'm going to lay anything on, but I think I'm going to couch over, which is actually what I did in my book. Now I come, yes. I'm going to couch over the drawn line. I think I'm going to start by doing that. So I'm going to come up here somewhere. And you can go over your whole line, or you can just go, if it's dark and then it fades away, you can just stitch where it's darker. Just whatever seems to speak to you. Just try and be aware of the piece of cloth and the mark on it. And just give it a little bit of thought. My threads are not laying nicely together. So my way of couching, if you don't know, and if you want to see it, you can look up, please, is to go over, imagine I'm couching down another thread there, go over the thing I'm couching down and down in a straight line. So you see that stitch is going to be straight over the line. And then I move along, staying on the same side for a little jump, whatever spacing I want. And then I come back and do the same thing again on the other side. Some people couch by jumping over and then coming straight back with the needle to the side where they've begun. And that's absolutely fine too if you like that rhythm, but I'm just explaining why I do it. I think I do it like this because I saw something that had been couched years ago and I just went and did it without, looking up how I was supposed to do it, which actually applies to a lot of what I do. So I'm just going to work my way around my little symbol. Not worrying when I get crayon on my finger. My hands are quite DIY at the moment. I've just put some hand cream on, well, just about an hour ago, so it can soak in. I wounded myself putting my shelves up. It wasn't anything to do with the shelves or cutting myself or anything. It was just that I knocked something off the worktop, and I went to catch it, which I did catch it, but I caught my finger with my own fingernail. I do also need to cut my fingernail. But anyway, I'll survive. Worst things happen at sea, my granny always used to say. So while I'm stitching, I'm looking at the mark appearing on the cloth, but I'm also looking at the tension in the stitches. I'm pulling them quite tightly. I'm liking the way it's rumpling up this piece of cloth. And I'm spacing them reasonably evenly and reasonably straight, but if you wanted to make them go in all directions, of course you can do that as well. And don't get your thread caught around the needles in your pincushion. This is so lovely to stitch, this cloth. I've got a whole little bundle of it all in bits. It literally started falling apart. I mended it and mended it and mended it, but then the shoulders started coming apart, and it was, I mean, I always wore it over something. I wore it as a pinny, with pockets for my secateurs and packets of seeds and bits of string and all the other stuff you need when you're going about the garden. My thread is really not behaving. If it all starts to separate, then I get it from where it's coming out of the cloth and run my thumbnail along it. Being careful not to unthread the needle. And I hope that sorts it out. It makes it all lay a bit better. Oh, that went better. So I'm being also following the width of the mark that I made. If you use something with a finer point, like a pencil or a Sharpie or a felt tip pen or something, then maybe you want to make your line wider, make your stitches longer over your line. That's all entirely up to you. No, this really is not behaving with 4 strands. My answer to that is to just pull it up even more tightly. So have I got some more interesting things to tell you about Ensō? I'll put a link. I found there's lots. If you Google Ensō, you want to put in Ensō circle, because Ensō is also some kind of weather phenomenon related to El Nino. And so you might get false hits if you put in Ensō circle or Ensō Zen or something like that. But a circle, the symbolism of a circle is across all cultures, isn't it? It's something that I think resonates with many of us, the circle of life. Represents everything being connected, and the beginning and the end, and the beginning and the end being a cyclical thing rather than a linear thing. The other thing about circles is you can look at them in 2 ways, and this was a theme I explored in a piece I did a couple of years ago for CQ West, which now hangs on my friend's wall, who I stayed with when I first came back to England, which is called Everything is Connected to Everything Else, and that was many, many circles interconnected. So yeah, it represents the connectedness of all things. And a circle can encircle you like a hug, protective circle. So if you're inside the circle, you talk about a circle of friends, for example, and that's a very comfortable, connected idea. But a circle can also exclude. So if you're in the inner circle, then that by definition means there are people that are not in the circle who are excluded. So there's that element to it as well. And they say that the actual drawing of the circle and how it manifests itself on the paper or the cloth is an image of the state of mind of the artist as they drew that circle. I find it quite interesting, which is why I made the book before. And quite universal, you know, although it's associated with Zen Buddhism. I think we can all get something from it. You don't have to be a Buddhist. And the fact that you draw it in a single movement and you don't go back and correct, you know, I could have gone back and perfected it. That's all about, and you've heard me say it before, embracing the imperfection. And it goes even further than that. It's seeing the imperfection itself as perfect. Shades again of Leonard Cohen and Kintsugi, when we looked at Kintsugi. There is a crack in everything, it's how the light gets in. And you'll see Enso drawn how I did, with an open-ended, but you can also draw them complete. And that's just a personal thing, I think. I think open-ended leaves you open to infinity and you know, it's less got that enclosed feel to it, obviously, because it's open. Maybe that's just what I need at the moment, although in my little book there, all the Ensos I drew were open. So when you draw yours, just have a look at how you've drawn it and maybe just reflect on that, and, you know, if you're into that sort of thing. Otherwise, just draw a circle and stitch it and, you know, enjoy the process. And the fact that I used the words in the book, I didn't actually put them on the Enso, they were on the in-between pages. That's also, sometimes you'll see that they've written words around, and traditionally that would be, you know, from Buddhist texts, but also humorous things or just words to inspire or things like that. So that's where I got the inspiration to put words in my little book. Right, maybe baby, just 2 more stitches. A couple of you gave me tips for the clock, by the way. I haven't got round to it yet, what with the water on my kitchen floor and everything. But I will have a look, open up the back and see if I can make it not be slow. There we go. So that's mine. So I could just quite simply call that done, but that's not even half an hour. So I won't do that. Oh no. Well, I think I'm going to do some stitching in the background with the plain thread, and I do also, I think I feel like I want to put my name, K3N, somewhere on here. And also here in my cloth there's a little tear. I think I might mend that first. The back's nice as well. When you couch this way, you get these 2 little lines. I'm showing you something, look up. On the back you get these 2 little lines of running stitch when you couch that way. If you couch the other way, you just get diagonal lines going. It's just different. I'm just going to do a couple of back stitches. This has been on my list to do for a long time. And I nearly didn't do it this week because last week we did monochrome, and you know, this is kind of black and white, but then I thought, well, it's completely different, so just go for it. I know some of you did do black and white or just white for your monochrome. There's no reason why you can't draw in a different colour on a different colour if you want to, if black and white doesn't speak to you, because again, we're inspired by it, we're not slavishly copying. That's entirely up to you. I'm hearing the drips in my jug. I really hope that I've got at least 6 hours before it's full, so that I can, have a reasonable amount of sleep. I'll have to try and find a taller container that fits there. Right, I don't know whether I'm going to do a proper darn over that, or I think I'm just going to, in the same way as I've done around there in the black, I'll just kind of couch over it. I might do a darn, I'll see. I'll start with doing little close together stitches over the rip, and then I can always go back afterwards. In fact, now I'm doing this, I really do want to go back and darn it. And while I'm doing this, I want to tell you about a video I just watched, which was, well, actually I've only watched half of it because I came to do this, so I shall watch the rest, which was catching up with Tracy at Moon and Sixpence. Hello, Tracy. Because I've missed a lot of videos from a lot of people over the last few weeks, so I'm, gradually here and there going and catching up. And Tracy posted a video showing a rice bag that she made using hexagons. I believe she calls them hexagons, hexies, and it's genius. I will put a link so you can go and have a look, because she wanted a rice bag that she could use as what we in Britain call a handbag and what you in the US call a purse. In Britain, a purse is a small wallet that you just keep your money in, and a handbag is the bag. But you have a purse. A purse is the actual bag that you carry. So what do you call the purse? Do you call that a wallet? Anyway, in Australia, do you have handbags or purses, or tell me? I want to know. I'm asking questions again. Anyway, back to Tracy's rice bag. So Tracy wanted, she made these 4 lovely panels with English paper pieced hexagons, and she joined them together with crochet, inspired by Alexandra, who I took the inspiration from the week I did the fusion crochet box. I think I did it with circles, I can't remember. Anyway, it doesn't matter. But yeah, so she wanted it as a handbag. I am going to weave in and out. But she was concerned about using the long straps that close the rice bag as a shoulder strap. That wasn't what she wanted. She wanted like a clutch, or a handbag with handles rather than a strap. And what she came up with is just wonderful. She used 2 wooden handles and integrated them into the mechanism by which you pull the bag closed, the drawstrings. So I'll put a link, you can go and have a look. It's not, she doesn't sort of, it's not a tutorial, is it, Tracy? But I think if you look at her video and look at how she's done it, you can hopefully work it out, because it's genius, and I really want to have a go myself at one point. Honestly, I've got so much on at the moment, work-wise. One exhibition's already in progress, exhibition at Symondsbury. I'll be there tomorrow for you, Tuesday the 1st of October, in the gallery. It opened on last Saturday. I've seen pictures, a colleague took some photos. It looks like it's been very nicely hung and curated. It's always interesting, because more often than not we hang our own work. It's always interesting, I think, to see how others hang it. So I will, I think I've said before, share a little video of it with you. I know a couple of you are hoping to come and see me, so I look forward to that. I don't think I'm going to do a proper, solid darn. I'm just going to do it open. But it's exactly like, well, it is needle weaving. I mean, needle weaving and darning are, excuse me, pretty much the same thing, aren't they? The only exception is needle weaving. You're not really mending anything, you're doing it as a decorative thing. Whoops, I didn't really need to go through all at once, but apparently I felt the need. And that warp on the end got a bit loosey-goosey, but Stella's snoring. Oh yeah, and that's the other thing this morning I found a new walk. I went up a lane alongside the woods, a little, grassy track. And I'd been up it before a little way, and then I'd always turned and come back, but I went all the way along, and then I came out onto a lane, but there was no cars, so the whole walk on that lane. I did keep Stella on the lead the whole time because of not knowing, exactly where I was in the lie of the land, so to speak. But we saw exactly one jogger and one gentleman on his bicycle, so she could easily have been off the lead. And then it came round and it came onto a slightly busier road, but not really busy, just, with some houses, and back round to our woods. So that was nice, and that took about an hour. So that's a nice long walk. And she's now snoring on the sofa. They did say it would rain today, but so far it hasn't. And since this is now partly an eating channel, I did want to report, after I posted again on the community pages. If you don't know the community page, by the way, if you go to my channel profile, the main page, where all the videos and playlists and everything are listed, you'll see a tab. So it says videos, playlists, and so on, and then there's a tab that says community. And if you click on there, you'll see that I sometimes post just a message if I want to tell you something, in between videos, or sometimes a photo, and that's where I shared a photo of my shelves made out of old cheese boxes. So anyway, the other day I posted on there my breakfast, which was crumpets with honey. And this did cause some discussion. I'm just going to stop with that as that. Some people said my crumpets were not properly cooked. I like them like that. I don't like them very dark. I like them lightly toasted, just crispy. But each to their own. You do you. Let's not have crumpet gate. But also I said that I always think of crumpets as sweet because I've always had, if I'm really naughty, golden syrup on them. Or if I'm slightly less naughty, well, not naughty at all, I put honey on them, or sometimes jam, but something sweet. And quite a fair few of you said crumpets and Marmite. And my mind was going, no, crumpets are sweet. But anyway, this morning I opened the cupboard where the honey and the Marmite both stand side by side, and I toasted myself a couple of crumpets, and I picked up the Marmite. And I must say, I did cut a little bit off one side. I buttered the crumpets, I cut a little bit off and put Marmite on, just in case I didn't like it. And I really did, so I Marmited the rest of them. And, yeah, crumpets and Marmite. So now I've got choices, thanks to you. Thank you so much if you recommended crumpets and Marmite. Right, I do want to do some stitching outside the circle. But I don't want to do it in this because it's quite shiny. I like it there for the mend because it's a little bit that kintsugi, celebrating the imperfect. So I'm going to have a look in my aughts and see if there's anything a bit more matte, a bit less shouty. What's this? No, that's not pale enough. That's too white. That's too white. No, okay, nothing in the aughts. I always start with the aughts, but sometimes you have to go into the tint. I've got a big leaning tower of stuff here. I'm still not entirely sorted out. Well, it's only been, is it 3 weeks now I've lived here? So I suppose that's normal. Have I got anything in here? Vaguely. That's a bit cream. How's that? Too bright. What about that? That's some vintage anchor. I think that'll be okay. That'll do, pig. So I think I'm going to just use 2 strands now, and do, I feel like doing some running stitch, I think. I might just kind of echo the edge of the Enso a little bit. I don't want to go round and round it and encase it. I don't know. I'm just going to put my needle in and start stitching and see what happens. Which is so liberating. I bless the day I discovered or rediscovered my love of hand stitching, and then started on this path to what we call slow stitching, where you literally just put your needle in and see what happens, rather than planning everything down, because I am by nature an overthinker. That's a phrase, isn't it? I had a mug with it on, but I didn't bring it with me. It was bought for me. I did not find it amusing because I struggle with it a bit. Anyway, that's something we won't dwell on. But yes, overthinking. I mean, some things you need to think. I mean, you think just enough, don't you? You think just enough. You think as much as is necessary for the thing. Overthinking, I think, is when you tie yourself up in knots and you get anxious about something that you would, I don't like to say should, that it would be possible to make a decision sooner. Like, for example, where you put, if you're piecing a quilt, where you put which cloth. You end up sometimes moving them around so many times that you put them back where you started, and that's what that sort of overthinking, or overthinking to the point that it blocks you. That you freeze. But yes, I think if you're an overthinker, and it can just be a quirk or something that you just know about yourself and it doesn't bother you, and it doesn't have a huge negative impact on your life, or it can be something that does have an impact on your life that makes you uncomfortable and anxious, and that you feel really stuck and blocked. I don't know why I started talking about overthinking. Yeah, slow stitch. And I did feel that quite often when I was making some of the work that you've seen now. If you watched the last episode of Park Home Life, my older work, as I refer to it, when I worked partly by machine, partly by hand, and the bright colours and so on. I like it, I look at it and I like it, and I'm proud of it, and so on. But the joy, I did enjoy making it, but it was much more product focused than process focused, with possibly the exception of the bubbles, the little cloth bubbles that I did free motion. And the more the handwork crept back in, and the more I was kind of constructing those backgrounds of torn strips and putting them together with the sewing machine, the more I was thinking, I can't wait to get all this sewn on with the sewing machine so I can sit and do the hand stitching. So then it was a natural progression to say, well, just forget the bit with the sewing machine and just, go straight to the hand stitching. That's the part you enjoy. So that was kind of, how that happened. So although I've put that work up, partly because I don't want to store it, I've got nowhere to store it. It doesn't do it any good really to live rolled up. But partly because I am, I do like it. But I wouldn't make it at this stage of my life. I won't say never, because you never know. But some of that involved quite a lot of overthinking. and I didn't find that pleasurable. I find this pleasurable. Just picking up some cloth and some thread and a needle. I'm having no idea. Well, obviously I have some idea for these weekly prompts. Maybe one week I'll just sit here and make it up on the spot. How about that? And see what we get. Maybe I could do that for the last one. What do you think? Let me know what you think. It would be lovely as well if I could do that live, wouldn't it? And a lady has told me that I can do YouTube live just using my phone. So maybe I'll look into that. Would that be cool for the last one? If I did it live and I just made it up on the spot? And maybe guided by you. I'm thinking on my feet here. Maybe you could do the last one. You could all come up with the last one and then I'll do it and you can all watch me. The trouble is then I'd have about 7,000 or 8,000 ones, wouldn't I? Unless you all got together first and had a meeting. So I've gone around that with one line. It's now making me think of ammonites because of the spiral. And because I'm very near to the Jurassic coast where there are lots of ammonite fossils. I'm in two minds. I kind of like the simplicity of it as is, but at the same time I'm enjoying it so much I want to do more stitching. I do want to leave somewhere for my name. You know what, I'm going to finish that there. I'm going to go down to one strand and just do some straight lines that are hopefully almost invisible, because I don't really need any more stitching on there, but I want to do more stitching, if that makes sense. I could just stitch with an empty needle. That's another exercise we could do one week. It is an exercise that I have done in person with people. But I don't know how that would go down, since we're doing making a stitch journal, most of us. We'd end up with just a piece of cloth with maybe with some tiny holes in, but nothing else. But yeah. Try it, just try it, stitching with an empty needle, and see how you feel, and then tell me. I think I'm going to go this way and just do some straight lines. And I think I don't do proper sash coat, but I'm going to do a few stitches at a time, just in the spirit of sash coat. A very short needle. A little bit close to my other line of stitching, but I'm just going with it. So this Wonky Wednesday, I'd mentioned it I think last Wonky Wednesday, will be not really a Wonky Wednesday. Well, it's Wednesday and it'll be wonky, so it will be a Wonky Wednesday, but it's going to be another kind of rice bag. And I did think of waiting until then to mention Tracy's rice bag turned into a handbag with the handles, but I just couldn't keep it to myself because it was so, I thought it was just ingenious the way she did it. So anyway, yeah, so this Wonky Wednesday will be part one of a two-parter, because I've been embroidering away these elephants inspired by the Gujarat Kutch embroidery, with the shishas, and the lovely open chain stitch that we all love so much. And I've made 3 of the 4 panels, or embroidered 3 of the 4 panels. So on this coming Wednesday I want to share with you the process of the stitching on the 4th one, not all of it because it's many, many hours per panel, but just each stitch, each section, and how I got the design onto the cloth and all that kind of thing. So yeah, this week will be all about preparing the panels and the embroidery. And then next week's Wonky Wednesday will be a different way of putting them together. So not the pieced way in the rice bag video, but a different way. So I hope that's all right. But I'm just telling you here because I know some of you Monday people don't watch Wednesdays, but maybe you will if it's a rice bag, or maybe you'll want to. It's up to you, obviously. I'm just going to squeeze a third line down there. I just think there's 3 extra little lines. Just necessary somehow. This cloth is so beautiful. I just like to sit with 2 layers of it and just stitch it and stitch it and stitch it. And I could, because I've got lots. If you've only got new scraps of new cloth, that people have given you or whatever, or cloth from, I've got some new cloth from when I was, a normal quilter. Firstly, I would say launder it if it's brand new, because they put sizing in it to make it all crisp, because apparently that's what people like. Apparently not everybody likes soft old crumply cloths. I like them all crisp and starched and sized. So first of all, wash it to get that out, and you could also hang them outside, in the elements, in the sun and the wind and the rain. It feels a little bit... I'm in 2 minds about taking new cloth and making it old like that. But then I think if you've got these scraps, don't go and buy new cloth and to do that to it, I would say. If you acquiring cloth, do try and thrift, because then it's already old and soft. But if you already have new cloth, you could try softening it a little bit by weathering it, or like I said, hanging it outside in the rain and the wind, and getting it more soft. Right, and keep that bit, because I can use that bit to sew it in my journal. And now I'm wondering, I don't know which way. I quite like the idea of that poking off the edge of the page, so maybe it goes that way. Maybe I want a couple more lines up here as well. Maybe I'll do 2 lines, and then the 3rd line will stitch it to my journal. I think I'll do that. Thinking ahead. I'm just going to come into, so I cross slightly my previous stitching. So week 40, that means we've only got 13 weeks left, because there are 53 weeks, 53 Mondays in 2024. And on the one hand, it feels like only yesterday when I sat down here and said, hello lovely people, or not here, but on this cloth. And did I have this cloth from the beginning? I can't remember. And welcome to week 1, which was community and cloth weaving. It feels like only yesterday on the one hand, but on the other hand, it feels like years ago. It feels like I've been doing this forever. It feels like I don't know any different. Do you know what I mean? No, I don't think I've got enough to go up and down 3 times, but I've got more. Doesn't matter, I can rethread. I remember in the beginning I used to get real needle threading anxiety if I had to needle thread while I was filming. It's strange, isn't it? Something you can do on your own without any qualms whatsoever. If I didn't thread it first time, I just felt that I was keeping you all waiting and not being, not knowing what I was doing kind of thing. Who am I sitting here trying to tell you about slow stitch when I can't even thread a needle, that kind of thing. But you've all been so kind and so lovely. And I know you really don't care if I sit here and can't thread a needle for 5 minutes. There might be just enough to go back the other way. We'll see. We'll see. We'll see. Will it? Or should I just not even try? I'm not going to even try. I'll finish off. I'm going to put my name on it, I think, in the red. I just want to say K3N was here. So about establishing identity, I think, and things like that. So I've decided that way's the way up. Because then this becomes like a vessel that holds. Yeah. So turn your own piece as well and try it, you know, all the different ways, and look at it, and rather not just from an aesthetic point of view, but like for example, when I see that there, that's like it's sat on this base of stitching. So it's grounded, and then it's open like a vessel. Do you see what I mean? And so if you look at yours every which way, what does that make you think of? There I see an unborn baby in that shape, you know, very early stages. And that way, that feels like now everything can fall out, and that makes me uncomfortable, so I'm going to go back to that way. I don't mind that way, that was the way I originally intended, that's the way I drew it. But I very much like the vessel, the idea of being held. So that's what I'm going to stick with. And I needed to know that because I need to make sure my initials are the right way up. Well, you could stitch them sideways, I suppose. Maybe I will stitch them sideways. My initials, you know, my 2 letters and a number. One of my friends sent me a card, a housewarming card, that came a few days ago. And the post lady, who I've got to know quite well, she's very chatty, and she always has doggy biscuits with her to bribe the dogs. And she said, "Is this you?" because it had my address on. And I said, "Oh yes." She said, "Oh, I thought it was for the chap down there because his name's Ken." She'd read it as Ken. So I had to explain the K3N to her. But now she knows. So I'm just going to do it freehand. If you want to stitch your initials or your name and you want to draw first, then you go for it. I'm kind of just using my 2 lines of stitching there as a guide for placement. That was a double drip into my little pot. It's awful, isn't it? Listening to the drips. But I'd rather hear them than put a cloth in there and not be able to hear them anymore. So then I'd be worried that it was overflowing. How am I going to do a 3? Am I going to do curvy? Or I think I'll do it like that. Like 2 little V's on their sides. That's very wobbly. And I've gone below the line, I didn't leave enough room, but never mind, it's all good. It's a very wobbly 3. Excuse me. Looks like a W on its side. There we go. N. And a little kiss. The reason I do a kiss, it begun because when filling in online forms, which I often have to do or often had to do to enter work for exhibitions and things, required fields are often first name and last name. And when I'm just K3 and I don't have a last name, so I started putting a little X as a kiss in the last name field. And then it just became part of my signature. Right. How these things are born out of necessity. Okay, there we go. put it the right way. Yes, I do like it that way. Oh yes. Yeah, I had no idea when I started, apart from the Enso, how the rest was going to be. I was drawn to these little leftover bits of thread from before, and the fact that it had a rip in it. But I'm very pleased with how it's turned out. I don't know why I'm knotting that thread, it can go in the aughts. So I'm going to pause you and take a photograph, and then I'll be back to put it in my journal, and I will tell you my words, which might surprise you. I'll be back in a moment. Okay, I've taken my picture, and I've also just realised I didn't write the date last week, which was the 23rd, so I'll do that when I've got a pencil in my hand. So I'm just going to stitch this along this edge. So that it blends in, or matches those other two lines of stitching that I did there. I've seen many photos in the Facebook group of people's journals getting deliciously chubby. I know it's becoming awkward to handle them, but it seems that most of you, or all the ones that are sharing their photos, are quite pleased with how chubby they're getting and liking the aesthetic, the tactile feel of them, and looking at all the work that you've done over the weeks all together. I think that's one of the joys of it, just seeing that whole body of work and then having it as an object that you can look back through again and again. As a record of the year, but also to inspire other things you might want to do. If you're stuck, I do that. If I'm stuck, I just go and pick up a stitch journal and flick through it, and there's always something that makes me think, oh yes, I could explore that further. Whoops. I'm not sure I've ever done one with oh, I've done 100 days. Yeah, no, I must have done hundreds, because I've done 100 days. And this will only be a mere 53. I was going to say, I don't think I've ever done one this fat, but I think probably some of the pieces in it are fatter than, or chunkier than the things I usually put in. I don't know if I want a dangle. I'm in two minds. Depends whether a dangle presents itself. So I have kept this small tin of beads here to hand. Those actually belong to my friend. She gave them to me for me to choose some to use. I must remember to give them back when I've chosen. I really feel like a red one or a black one would be best. It's a nice glass red one. I wonder if it's too big. What do you think? Tell me what you think. Is it too big? Or do you just say, Catherine, it'll do, get on with it? You've already kept us here for over an hour. Oh, there's no point in me looking at the time on the video because I stopped and started. Yeah, we'll go with that one. I'm just going to do it simple simples. Put the needle through, get it where I want it. Somewhere there. Actually, I might go round it twice with the needle where I want it. One way and then the other way. Does that work? I don't know. I'm fiddling about. Doesn't work. They just... Oh yeah, it kind of does, look. You probably can't see, but I'm kind of making a little... like the segments of an orange in the stitching. I don't know if they'll stay where I'm putting them, but we can but try. Talk amongst yourselves while I fiddle about. Well, I think they'll probably all close up together, but Anyway, it was fun trying. Sometimes you just feel like fiddling. That'll do. And I'm going to go back up to the top and anchor it there so it's double strength. The length right. There we go. No, all those don't do that. That's not worth doing because all the stitches are slid and they're all wonky. You could go all the way around and completely cover it, but then it would be a shame of my shiny red bead. Whoops. Okie dokie. So the words, which I said might surprise you. There's all those pencils. There we are. So it's today the 30th of last day of September. I'll write last week's because I didn't, which was the 23rd. And my, I've already signed it there, so I don't need to sign it there. And my words come from Billie Jean King, the tennis player, who's very inspirational, I think. And I've heard her say this many times, and I think she says or said it when she was coaching. And it's very much her catchphrase, and it is this: stay in the now. And I'm going to write BJK because we all know who that is. There we go, stay in the now. It just came into my head and I thought it was appropriate. Obviously you can choose whatever you find inspirational. Stay in the now. There we go, so that is week 40. Enso. I hope you enjoyed it. And as always, thank you so much for watching. And don't forget to go and have a look at Tracy's fabulous rice bag. I'll put a link to her video down in the description. And I look forward to you joining me next time for more cloth tales. Bye bye.